everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on the future ready CEO programs, and we have our world famous speaker Madam Ali Rice and Rob Enderley. First, I would like to ask question Ali Rice about this future ready CEO, how you want to define and how do you balance long-term strategic vision with the rapid and predictable technological disruptions such as AI, automation, and digital ecosystem.
Yeah, because I think, so I've only just started using AI in the business really recently, and I was quite resistant to use it. But there's something incredible about the AI, and because at the moment I run a regular art class with children, and I suddenly discovered that Grup, which is part of X and Elon Musk's kind of technology, which is free to download, can animate real drawings, keep true to the original drawings. And I've always been involved in animation, but obviously it takes a long time to produce even a short part of animation. So to actually have animations created in seconds from a drawing that's achieved, within 30 minutes is incredible. So I've suddenly discovered the magic of it. But I am quite resistant to, where it all goes. And I think it's really important to stay true to the original skills instead of getting AI to do everything for you. So, there's kind of a moral compass that I still think that transfer of skills and embedding practice is really important. So I think it's really cool to quicken the process, but I don't think it's necessarily great to do it for you. And essentially, I know that for some people, kind of access to kind of creativity isn't necessarily there. But I think for those, especially for young people, I think it's kind of just enhancing those skills is really cool. But I think it's lazy and kind of means that you diminish the skills that are potentially there if you don't use them. So I think the thing is that it's a great tool to have, but I still think, same as, writing something, I think the ability to write is a key skill and should be encouraged as opposed to just relying on ChatGPT to do everything for you. So I think the thing is that I think it's great if it's a tool that quickens the process. But if you just utilize it so it does it all for you and you're not actually using critical thinking or any ability that I just think it's frustratingly, one of my friends is a professor of English, and she lives in Moscow, and one of the things that drives her crazy is students that do assignments through AI, and she knows that they don't have the ability to produce the work that they actually hand in. So I think the thing is, for me, it's frustrating. There's no point doing a degree if you're not going to, put the work in. So yeah, for me, it's a bit of a bugbear in some ways.
Mhm. Thank you. Mr. Rob, how do you want to define this future ready CEO? And what's your uh, strategic visions for rapid and unpredictable technology disruptions such as AI and digital ecosystem?
Sure. Well, I think as I've shared in the past, I went through the IBM training program, and it's sad to say that most of IBM senior executives did not. Because folks would put it off, they wouldn't attend the classes, and they didn't think they were important. But in that program, I was trained by folks like Admiral Grace Hopper, who was the one that trained me on IT futures, and then the top sales people in the world, the top managers. We were put in front of folks that were from outside of IBM, but were considered, and each one of them had a class and session that we attended that were considered at the time the best in the world. And so it made me realize that most CEOs are not trained to be CEOs, and that's problematic, because to be a good CEO, you need a breadth of understanding. And the typical way you get to be a CEO, well, there are kind of two paths. One of them is you build the company yourself, and so you kind of grant yourself the position or given the position early on in the company's life, and you carry it forward. The other is you transition in from one of the vertical pillars that are in the company. It could be sales, which is typically a bad idea. It might be operations, so that rarely happens. And IBM, they once had a CFO become CEO. That wasn't good either. Opal was not considered one of the better ones, but he wasn't one of the worst. And I think one of the amazing things was when IBM collapsed, they had, at the time, at least on paper, one of the most well-rounded CEOs in Akers that they'd ever had. But by that time, they destroyed the office of the CEO to a degree that the CEO didn't get the information they needed to to make timely messages. They were surrounded by a set of aides. Aides would tell the CEO what the CEO wanted to hear, but not what they needed to hear. So bad news was avoided, good news was provided, and so Akers was completely unaware that the company was riddled with problems that needed to be corrected until those problems cost him his job. And it really wasn't. I mean, I would argue it wasn't his fault. He was put in a position that nobody could have won in. And so when we talk about a CEO and strategy and an uncertain future, first you've got to have a strategy. I mean, and originally when I came into the market, we didn't have CTOs. The CEO was the one that was expected to come up with a strategy. And I still think that's a better way to do this. Having somebody that doesn't have the authority to drive change, be the person that crafts the change, is problematic because the CEO may not believe in the change that's been crafted. And so you've got a CTO that can create a strategy, can suggest a future, but unless the CEO fully embraces it, it's a waste of effort. And we certainly saw that at Intel a while back when they had one of the strongest CTOs in the market under Brian Kersanich. He went by BK, but he didn't like him, didn't listen to him, and then forced the guy out of the segment. And of course, it wasn't long after that Brian got kicked out for being completely incompetent. So it comes down to, first you got to have a strategy. You got to have to know the concepts of a strategy. You have to have a vision. You have to set a goal. I think it was Yogi Berra that said, if you don't know where you're going, you're probably not going to get there. And so you have to set a strategy first. And then second, the strategy's got to be fluid. No plan survives combat. I'm wording it incorrectly, but that's the gist of one of the old Sun Tzu sayings, is that no plan survives combat, and it's the same with a strategy. You can certainly set a strategy, but things are going to change. If you were 3 years ago, I doubt anybody would have taken, anybody outside of artificial intelligence research would take AI seriously. It was pretty much all crap 3 years ago. Not performant, not capable. The things we were calling AI, things like Siri, were basically text-to-speech converters pulling from the web. They weren't smart. They weren't intelligent, artificial or not. They weren't. But that's what we were looking at for artificial intelligence. And in the last 3 years, in fact, I would argue, in the last 18 months, AI has advanced to the point that in a number of areas it's actually performant and extremely so. But it's also failing at a rate that's greater than 90% if you look across the ecosystem. So that tells me you've got a tool that does work, but you've got a lot of people in critical positions that have no clue what its strengths or weaknesses are, and the end result is failure. And so you're a CEO, you've got a strategy, you know where you want to go, but the underlying foundations of how you're going to get there, your plan to achieve that strategic goal, has got to change, because the fundamental elements that surround it, the tools you're going to use to change, the partners you might have are going to change. And of course, it's not just technology that changes things. This whole tariff thing has been a huge monkey wrench in any logistics chain. And so if you're unable to pivot, if you didn't have flexibility in your channel, if you didn't have flexibility in your supply chain, you're probably looking at some pretty dire months ahead if you haven't already failed. A lot of small businesses here have been failing pretty regularly of late, and not because of technology, because of tariffs. But a number of companies are still flourishing because they built in the flexibility in their plans to be able to pivot. They'd anticipated that things would not be stable, and whether you've got tariffs or not, supply chains are inherently unstable. You've got government issues, you've got material shortages, you've got wars that can disrupt significantly supply chain. And so if you haven't created something that's robust and flexible, you're not going to survive. So number one, you have to be able to create a strategy, a viable strategy, a goal that you can try to achieve. And number two, it's got to be flexible enough so that you can adjust the methodology you get to that goal to a degree that you can still achieve it. And then finally, you got to have solid information sources. The real lesson from John Akers' failure at IBM was he didn't assure his information sources. It really was the only major mistake he made. If he'd had the information he needed to make the right decisions, he would have immediately known that his aides, the people that were providing him with the information that he critically needed, weren't providing him with the information that he had to have, and he would have known to either eliminate that function, which looking back was what I would have done, or modify it to a degree so he recognized the underlying problem was that they didn't believe he could take bad news, and so it's simply fixing that and assuring that he had a solid information stream that could be trusted would allow him to survive, and there's a much better chance that IBM wouldn't have nearly died, and would have been able to pivot. And they made a lot of really horrible mistakes that we probably go into it at another cycle. But in the end, if you can't create a strategy and you're not flexible, you are not going to survive in any age, particularly one that is changing as rapidly as this one. So that, I think, kind of addresses the initial question, and I'll pass on to David.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Khandekar, for joining today's sessions. He is from Citibank, Bangladesh, and we are planning for collaboration for our CEO development program. So we have our guest, honorable guest, Mr. Khandekar Kobir, and then I want to give chance Mr. David Smith. Mr. Khandekar Kobir, can you share your experience as a leadership forum president? How does it work, and what is the corporate scenarios? What is the strategy to develop a better CEO for Bangladesh banking industries? Mr. Kobir.
Well, Mr. Rana and others and parts panel, my pleasure to use and use our present and future collaboration and Bangladeshi banking and CEOs and other CEOs. First of all, I think thank you, Sharif bhai. I'm introducing myself. This is Khandekar Kobir, founder, president, Leaders from Bangladesh. Leaders from is a big community in Bangladesh where some multi-dimensional professional and include in this umbrella. More or less 5,000 professionals injected in last 5 years. We have started this platform in COVID-19, and we feel that this platform we can transform our experience and others activities. That's why we build this platform. And last 5 years we have done a 4th big summit in 5-star hotel in Bangladesh, as well as I was work HSBC Bank, Standard Bank, and the Bragg Bank, and now I'm working in the Citibank. I'm the market specialist in Bangladesh, and I was in work retail banking and corporate finance also. Thank you, and this thing is very well and very glad to me that the world leaders the collaboration here, and we build a CXO and others portion in Bangladesh. We have around 1,000 plus CXO in this platform, and there's 23 segments professional, not only in banking industry. Well, we think and is developing. We first thing the motto of this platform: self-development and giving back to society. Okay. In this circumstance, we have built and working on this, and in future we are planning with Sharif bhai, and also we are thinking how we collaborate. Because of the leader should make a leader, also the CEO, also the big leader or the in the industry or the banking institution. So this is a platform leaders from Bangladesh, and Mr. Kobir Khandekar is named Khandekar.
Thank you for
Thank you.
joining sessions, and we want to explore more how we can work together for developing CEOs or inventing technology, deploying innovations, and all of the things. David Smith, you are a very dynamic leader for iBeyond. So what leadership behavior must evolve for CEO to remain relevant in a future defined by decentralized teams, what Mr. Kobir want, or remote work culture, what iBeyond do, and global digital collaborations, what World Talent Economic Forum developing their ecosystem. So what's your thought?
Well, you're 100% right if you look at the different approaches going through there, because modern CEOs must embody really visionary leadership, They have to drive today digital transformation, and they must drive that digital transformation at a very accelerated pace. They have to really cultivate not just a strategic advantage, but strategic agility. When Rob was talking about the leadership at IBM, that was one of the places where I saw failures in leadership at IBM was in agility. They were stuck there. And Rob used a couple of analogies. I'm going to use one I love to use. And Dr. Shreve, the question I love to ask leadership is, do they know why the windshield on a car is bigger than the rear view mirror and the rear window in the car? And the answer is, it's actually from a leadership, from a CEO's perspective. It's more important to know where you're going than where you've been. Or as Gordie Howe says, the hockey player, is I don't go to where the puck is, I go to where the puck is going to be. And as a CEO, that is a critical skill to be successful there. And the other place where today's CEOs is different than some of the CEO functions in the past, and why their leadership behavior must change, is their role has shifted from being an operational oversight to being the architecture of organizational innovation, of organizational resilience, of prioritizing talent development as part of what a CEO has to do today. So really, as part of your question, how the leadership behaviors must evolve, they must evolve from traditional transformational. They're reimagining the business model around data, around artificial intelligence, around future systems and future ecosystems. They have to balance imagination, innovation with execution, and foster a culture within their company that is much more important than it had in past. And then they have to do the stakeholder analysis, stakeholder alignment to really get there, to be able to function in a way that makes sense. Because they have to be a catalyst now than just an operational leader. And one of the places that I find very interesting, and I almost want to see Rob's face as I get to say this comment, is your new CEO with the leadership behavior you're asking about there. They have to really be the one to say that I have to be driven by data decisions. Many CEOs in the past were driven more by their personalities shaping the organization. And today's CEOs have to become more data driven. You know, we've talked on your program a lot of things like digital twins, which if I was a CEO today, boy, I would be using digital twins as part of my leadership approach and working there. You know, it's the future is going to be defined by decentralized teams and global collaboration. But the global collaboration is not new, but the way it's being done now is new, that the leadership, the CEO has to adapt to. In the past, you had global collaboration, but it was not a converged collaboration. It was very explicit. It was very targeted. I wanted to collaborate with someone on this particular element. I wanted to collaborate, if I was IBM, with Siemens on part of their infrastructure program, their power systems and things. I wanted to collaborate with a Cisco on part of their network gear to help enable my operations. But today you have to go beyond that and look at how, because of not only vertical convergence, but horizontal convergence for a CEO, that whole surface plane has changed dramatically going there. And so the movement from command and control to being distributed orchestrators who lead through the clarity of their vision, the clarity of their purpose, the clarity of their empowerment has to be one of the key leadership areas that today's CEOs must embrace. And they need to learn how to do this with their presence at a distance. Because as your question asks, so much of this is going to be remote teams, distributed, non-centralized teams. So you have to look at how do you do this about intentional communications. So the CEO today has to have a much broader approach. In the past, you would have all hands meetings. You would have notes coming out of the office of the CEO. And I personally believe today you're going to have an office of the CEO and not just the CEO. But they need to show up regularly in synchronous and asynchronous channels, video updates, all hands, internal social platforms, regional meetings, others like that to reinforce direction. You know, in the past, many of these signals were conveyed in hallways in corporate headquarters, but with the new approaches, as you asked in your question, of really decentralized teams, remote work culture, and digital global communications, you've got to work in this new way of leading through presence at a distance. And the final one, I think that the big leadership change is that you have to architect the culture, not just architect the structure of the company. You've got to architect the culture. And one of the ways you do this is promoting and demonstrating and deploying continuous learning and an adaptive mindset. And the view of how I think the world is going, that continuous learning is so very important today. But I hope I didn't go too far, Dr. Sharif, but these are some of the elements I really think are necessary. And you do have to be future facing to be a new CEO today.
Yeah, excellent. Mr. David Smith, Jiri, as you are from Europe and you are also running a entrepreneurial ecosystem and startup ecosystem. So my questions, the same things, how do you build an organizational culture that embraces experimentations, innovation, failure tolerance while still maintaining operational efficiency?
Hello, everybody. Good greetings from the Plzeň, Czech Republic. I would like to contribute to the discussion by quoting a couple of inspirational quotes from the book Leadership Strategies for New Age from John Hyder. Thank you for this possibility to quote. And he's asking, which principles do you use in your leadership? Yes, and I would like to, despite the fact that I would like to use AI as a helper, I would like also to stay human. So these quotes, which I will share now, these are from the human perspective, not AI. But I believe that there could be some collaboration with AI in the future. But at this moment, I'm using these human principles that your job is to support and illuminate what is happening and how it is happening, process what I should do, and the principle how things are happening. Says Mr. Hyder in his book, the leader's job is to be aware of the process of the group members. The need of the group members is for somebody to accept them and for somebody to pay attention to them. And these kind of principles I'm trying to implement inside my communities. At this moment, I have a small community of 10,000 CEOs in the Czech Republic. So you are welcome to connect with me and share the connection from the Czech Republic. And now I would like to give you space back, Mr. Sharif. Thank you very much for giving me.
Thank you. We are also introducing the CEO development program. You are part of these programs in Czech Republic. and definitely in UK and North America. As Mr. Kobe, you are from banking industries, and we when we discuss about the CEO development, future ready things in our communities, what I understand that this uh, we need climate finance to solve different kind of challenge. We need fund, available fund. On the other hand, Islamic finance also very popular as people respect this Islamic finance. So what's your thoughts about what we see that do you introduce blockchain in the banking system, artificial intelligence for carbon credit trading, zakat, green sukuk, or waqfa management, or how to make a smart contract based on compliance and transparency in between the banking system? Because when we discuss about CEO, finance is very very important, and when we discuss about different entrepreneurs even from Bangladesh, we find that they have lack of knowledge and understanding about this financial instrument. So, how your bank, and as you have a big ecosystem, many banks working in your ecosystem, how does they work? It will be helpful for our other panelists. Maybe they can respond after that.
Well, Dr. Sharif, in the ecosystem in Leaders Forum and as well as my personal leadership in Bangladesh and in banking industry as well as there are a lot of opportunity in Bangladesh. You told now, sustainable banking for the climate finance, Islamic finance. I think Islamic finance is growing in Bangladesh industry and banking industry because of after COVID, it would be the very preciously taking the all of the bank. You know, the banking industry is an Islamic bank in Bangladesh, but not only the Islamic bank, most of the private commercial bank is doing their windows in Islamic area. So that it's based on the AI on the in future planning of the industry grow by the banking industry. You know, all the industry grow by the bank, so that we can echo with the Islamic finance division. Already I have told some few of banks Islamic division heads and others officials, but uh, we have to echo them very preciously and world standard way. So I hope that they have the opportunity to system development for the CO development area and then the financing area and carbon credit also, as well as the running area in Bangladesh and a big area in Bangladesh, and so that bank can do the areas and support by the bank, we can collaborate our ecosystem CO development program as well as
Mhm.
well. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we innovating technologies and solution, and we go for research, and that's why I come to Bangladesh doing deep research. Mr. David Smith, as you're working with IBM, so what do you think? How banking system can be benefited, and CEO especially can be benefited through this kind of financial instrument through blockchain technology or artificial intelligence? Then I come to Mr. Rob.
From my perspective, banking technology today is at an inflection point. It's moving to a more global platform. We're seeing systems of the past which need to be probably thrown away and replaced. For example, the SWIFT network for settlements between banks, because we're looking at many new types of digital currency. We're looking at ways where some of the regulatory impacts, particularly around nation sovereignties, around privacy concerns for individuals and others, that are making many of the traditional banking processes obsolete, really is the best way to put it. You know, you really need to also look at how to use more of the innovative technology to open more possibilities to improve banking regulations and banking supervision, because you're going to do it because finance today is, and banking is all about data. how to make more, better, faster business decisions. And the fact that we understand today, in particular, more in the past, is there's more opportunity for negative outcomes. You need to understand that there's going to be zero-sum processes put in place there. You're seeing better, lower-cost telecom really going there, and that you need to look at really some new, sensible ways to look at how to make banks stable, solvent, and profitable, but you need to look at how to not have the, I don't know quite the way to put it, the extra overhead that was there in the past, because you saw many bad actions that occurred because of that. And we need to understand that how can we do better assessments and have better decisions. We've talked already in your program today, Dr. Freeth, about, for example, the utilization of digital twins. Digital twins is going to be I think, a very important technology going forward with it. But we also need to see that with the way banking has changed today, and the fact that the dramatic power of national banks is decreasing today, as we look at more global means of currency. That's going to change how we do it, and whether we use distributed ledgers, which blockchain is just a type of distributed ledger, and I'm not for sure with where we're headed with quantum networks and quantum computing, if blockchain is the best for large-scale banking in the future. It's not bad, but it's really about working with a distributed ledger that's secure, and a distributed ledger that can be trusted. And that's one of the challenges going forward with banking. And the other thing as you get there is we need to look at how to make banking from a technology standpoint more future-proof. From this pure technology, from the computational engines. If I go out and look at AI today, if I go and look at the type of CPUs being done with the movement towards more GPUs, more TPUs, more QNNs as part of the computational architecture. We're seeing now quantum effects and neural networks put on the same die together, the same chip together, which, if I'm looking at banking, I'm going to look more at things like that quantum effects and neural network type of chip than I'm going to look at GPUs. Because banks really are not creating large or small language models. They're not doing LLMs. They're looking at how to take it and operationalize their technology in a way that serves the bank's needs, their clients' needs, and the government's needs. So that, to me, is part of the answer, is you understand that these massive transformations are headed, and we're at an inflection point right now in banking. We're at an inflection point as we look at the rise of more digital currencies, as we look at the rise of how do we look at what is going to be the successor to the SWIFT network for settlements. And I think the settlement network is going to help drive a lot of the future banking transformations. And that's my view.
Thank you. Mr. Rob, we have our audience for today's Dan. So his questions, I want to ask you, how can CEOs take their organizations into the cooperative sphere?
Well, by their very nature, corporations have to be cooperative. The fact that they're a corporation would I don't believe you can be a corporation and not be cooperative, because
Right.
you can't really do it all yourself. And at the very least, even if you're a large major corporation like Ford or General Motors, that you're gonna have to cooperate with the folks that are putting in place the regulations, putting in place the controls, and certainly you're gonna have to cooperate with the companies that are doing things that you don't do, because no company does everything anymore. So when he says sphere of cooperation, I'm assuming he means corporation to corporation, maybe cooperation instead of competition. And there lays an interesting problem. So how do you and that goes back to my experience with standards. And my early training with standards is my manager took me aside and I said, okay, so the goal is we're going to move the technology forward. He says, no, your goal in working with a standards body is to make sure no competitor gets an advantage that we don't have. So invariably, we're not going in a collaborative fashion. We're going to make sure everybody's going into one of these efforts, at least from the standpoint if you're executive backed, not to move the technology forward, but to make damn sure that no other company gains an advantage over you in the process. And that's problematic when you're trying to get stuff done. It puts in place a massive amount of distrust. And now, I will point out that often the rank and file will not follow these directives, which is one of the reasons we actually get stuff done. I recall when Microsoft and Oracle were trying to deal with customer problems. Microsoft was actually, at that particular point in time, was actually pretty good at trying to get cooperation to get it done. That they were smaller when this story I'm telling you was created. But Larry Ellison was saying, yeah, if you cooperate with Microsoft, you're going to be fired. And what happened was, though, is the Oracle engineers said, no, we got to take care of our customers, and we got to get this done. And so they under the table they cooperated and they were able to work with Microsoft and get stuff done and made sure all those efforts were invisible to Larry Ellison, so they'd get their asses handed to them. So when you look at if you really want companies to cooperate, then you really have to foster an environment where the customer truly does come first. The customers want companies to cooperate. They could give a crap about competition between firms. They just want stuff to work. They want interoperability. They want flexibility. They want choice. Now, the funny thing is, and one of the most interesting lessons that I can convey is in the late 90s, Microsoft wasn't much about cooperating either. And the EU stepped up. European Commission actually came in and said, you will you're going to open up your interfaces. And if you don't open up your interfaces, we are going to fine you millions of dollars a day. And I don't care how big you are. There are fines that can bring you to your knees. And this fine was pretty much doing it. It suddenly became material. And so they said, okay, yeah, I guess we're going to do this. And I met with the team, the executive team that was doing this, and they said, but we got this. They're going to say we're going to provide our interfaces. We're going to charge those companies so much to get access to those interfaces that it'll just never work. And I looked at them and said, do you really think the folks that are providing the regulations and directives are this stupid? I mean, what do you think they're going to do when you do that? And they went back and rethought the whole thing, and then they embraced it, because they recognized that the blowback for what it was they were going to do was going to be so severe that it was going to make the overall. I mean, they're probably going to lose the jobs. So they, to their credit, they pivoted, and Microsoft, seemingly almost overnight, though it took a while, became much more cooperative. And if you look back, that was a growth spurt for them. It actually worked for them, because suddenly their customers appreciated what it was they were doing, and the kind of resistance that was in place that kind of took Linux from a niche operating system into a major player was gone, and those very actions kept Linux from going to actually fully displace them, which you could have done. That Linux was a customer-driven effort, largely focused on destroying Microsoft. There was an old saying that says if you want to get stuff done, use BSD Unix, and if you wanted to go after Microsoft, you got Linux. And it really was designed to be a Microsoft destroyer. And if Microsoft hadn't pivoted, I think it would have been successful. So a heavy focus on customer needs and wants, and it goes back to, I think, what David was also saying with regard to making sure that you have an information and data culture, because there's a tendency out there to only look at, it's called confirmation bias, that only look at the things that agree with the opinions that you already have. And confirmation bias is a company killer, because you simply won't see what you need to see, and the pitfalls that are coming up. It's not that they're invisible. It's just that you will refuse to see them, which is even more problematic. And so you have to be willing to look at the world as it is and make your decisions based on facts, not based on wishes and hopes. You have to be well grounded. Now, when we talked, you were talking about banking before, and I got to work with the banking industry quite a bit when I was with IBM, and I would, if I were going to make a prediction about the banking industry, I would say somewhere between 80 and 95% of the banks that exist today will be gone by 2035, and I'll tell you why. Because they when it comes to technology advancement, banks are Luddites, and there's a reason for that. They have to be very conservative. A bank that's on the cutting edge of technology, it's probably a bank that's not going to be around long. It's people when they put their money in banks or use banks for investments, they want stability. They don't want massive amounts of change, but there has to be balance. And the thing is, with artificial intelligence coming in, whether it comes to analysis, whether it comes to customer engagement, whether it comes to providing services to their own clients, that's a game changer, and it's changing very quickly. Now, I'm not saying banks have to be on the cutting edge, but they sure as hell can't be decades behind like they currently are with technology. That's not going to work. And so we're going to see an uprising of financial institutions. We may call them banks. We might call them something else, that I believe will displace most of the banks out there, and only the ones that see this soon enough and pivot fast enough will be able to survive the wave. And by the way, banking isn't alone. I would argue that the transportation industry, medical industry, I don't think there's a single industry that isn't going to go through just a massive amount of failure and churn as we bring this out. Because in effect, this technology is coming in and it's changing the fundamentals of work. And if companies don't wrap their heads around this and put in place flexible policies to adjust for the changes and do so intelligently, in other words, don't do what a lot of people are doing right now and over-investing and over implementing before the technology is ready, but making sure you are ready when it is going to make all the difference in the world. So in the end, if we're going to move these companies to the future, the companies have to be flexible enough to make the changes that are necessary. They have to have the information to make the changes intelligently, and finally, they have to bring up their workforces underneath, so those workforces don't become obsolete and are fully capable of being performant in the future. I will say one more thing before we move on. When it comes to CEOs, one of the big problems with CEOs and company failures is the fact they don't take their employees as a priority. They may talk the talk, but they definitely don't walk the walk. If you don't take care of your employees will not take care of you. And in a time of massive change, you need everybody on the same page, going in the same direction. An employee with the kinds of tools we're talking about that goes off the rails can do an incredible amount of damage. A union that's acting against the company with kinds of tools and capabilities right now can bring a company to its knees and put it out of business. You have to have your employees on the same page with you. You have to be able to lead and not manage those employees. And if you're a CEO that doesn't have that leadership skill, that doesn't feel that like they need to take care of their subordinates and their people, you are dead and you just don't know it yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. As we, Madam Ali Rice, I want to go for data-driven decision-making. I just want to demonstrate our, as World Talent Economy Forum institutions working as a research center. So we go for some complex problem solutions as we are doing deep research on Bangladesh banking sectors, and we are developing agent banking systems based on different department like chief strategy officer, chief financial officers, chief marketing officers, head of research, lead data analytics. We call it NOVA, innovation lead. We call it customer success managers, and each and every departments like HR department, cybersecurity specialists, legal advisors. We are developing AI agent. This AI agent actually helps the banking system and improve the efficiencies and all of the things. This is the things we are inventing in our research centers. So Madam Ali Rais, what's your thoughts about this data-driven decision making? How specifically this leadership area, people can take more efficient and effective decisions as a CEO?
For me, because I've worked in education, the data-driven decisions actually don't necessarily reflect potential for me. So I know it sounds so for my, in England you do a SATs test, and the SATs results basically determine what groups your children are put in when they go to secondary school. And the thing is that just those results are completely wrong and don't necessarily reflect the ability of the child. So for me, and I don't work with data, so to be honest, I can't necessarily answer the decisions other than the fact that I don't believe that those SAT results determine, my son ended up getting straight A's for his A levels and his GCSEs, and he knocked everything out of the park. But basically, when he was put into groups, there was question marks over his ability because some of his scores were lower than they should have been. So, and essentially, he was in a middle school with lots of disruption. So he was actually being affected by the disruption. So I think the thing is that data, big data does have an impact on everything, but it's not the be all and end all of it. And I think the thing is that there are critical decisions that are made that are wrong, that affect children's outcomes, unless they have parents, and support that kind of foundationally gives them the belief that they can achieve. And essentially then what happens is that, the secondary school, that my children go to, claim that they made all the difference when that intelligence and ability was there the whole time, but their data-driven thing was based on just one result in a test before they were even 11. So I think the thing is, for me, data-driven, in education, for me, data actually goes off goes off piece, really, and the fact that that people have breakthroughs. And my son's dyslexic, so he had coping mechanisms that surmounted, and he was also given the opportunity to use a word processor because his writing was very difficult. So for me, data driven, I constantly feel like the cat amongst the pigeons, because I just think that data driven things don't necessarily determine everything, and there's flaws in the system. And for me, the education system, finance, in 2020, all those systems were broken. And most Western countries are in massive debt. So the thing is and for me, even finance, isn't money just an IOU? And essentially, one of the things that happens is that when we have critical problems and money runs out, it's because everybody starts asking for the money that's owed. And the people that know how to make finance work are the ones that, I read something the other day, apparently Elon Musk doesn't have a salary. And he doesn't get taxed on anything because he knows how to work the system. So I think the thing is that, in my mind, that the systems need to change because they're really corrupt, and the people that do well know how to work the system, and the people that don't do so well in the financial system are the ones that don't really understand it. So so I don't know whether I've even answered it, but I just think that data-driven, as interesting as it is, I don't think necessarily data has positive impacts on real scenarios. I think the thing is that it just looks like it does. And it means that schools, our school is constantly just driven on their results and, and what holistically benefits an individual child. Results aren't the be all and end all of everything. So, and I think the thing is that people that make it, there's lots of people in this country that are, incredible entrepreneurs that had dyslexia and the education system failed them. So essentially, I still think that there needs to be more than that. So yeah, so that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Kobir. As we are collaborating for CEO development program, so they are my colleagues, those who actually train all of the corporate CEOs, and they have all of the experience from Silicon Valley and Texas, Austin, from UK and Europe. We have more experienced people in our team. So as you are one of the great leaders for Bangladesh corporations, how should CEO redesign their business model to thrive in a world driven by economical platforms, sustainabilities, and creating values for their company?
Well, sorry, all the panelists are very heavily and experienced people in the world circumstance anyway, and not only banking area, and then the others area also as well. In Bangladesh banking system, and I would say that CEOs should be, firstly, they have the change their mindset, developing their mindset and the ecosystem with the customer desire and want, and then the collaboration of the Rob already said that the CEOs is one to say, and then your team like to goes this way, same way, and the same thing. That's why the development is here needed for the in future area. I think there are scope in Bangladesh and to developing the CEOs areas, all the experienced people from the World Talent Economic Forum as well as the world experienced people. We think it's an initiative, it's a good initiative, and we can collaborate. And we have to connect the ecosystem, all of the expertise in Bangladeshi CEOs development program. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We need more of your support because you have a biggest ecosystem. You have all of the infrastructures. We want to deploy these innovative solutions and our best resources. They have all of the best experience. So it will be helpful for Bangladesh corporation. It will be helpful for our Bangladesh economy. That's why I come to Bangladesh to create a global north and global south collaborations and create a innovative ecosystem. So for that particular issues, the banking sectors, universities, industry, academia, even religious institutions, everywhere I go and I approach that how we can improve our ecosystems. Here is the best things we can develop and we can improve our economy. So, Giri, what's your thoughts about redesigning business ecosystems as you are working with redesigning ecosystems? So, what's your thought?
Yes, I like everything that was said here tonight. I really resonate with it. Also with Ali, with the children, we should support our children because I have experienced myself, but this is for a private discussion. I would like to say that I'm trying to implement a principle quoted by Bruce Lee, a great martial artist, because I myself did Budo for 14 years, and Bruce Lee said, it is a law that everything that is liquid, soft and pliable, like water, overcomes what is hard and unmoved. So I think this should be applied in the business leadership as well. And I strongly believe that principles like this, for example, that the leader's behavior is based on understanding how opposite end cycles work, effective action always seems to be regressive. So I try to be interested in the philosophy of leadership, and I would be happy to talk to anybody about that on a private call as well, because these thoughts about leadership we are discussing tonight are very interesting for me. So thank you for being here again, and back to you, Mr. Sharif.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. David Smith, what strategies can CEO adapt to ensure workforce reskilling, what we are doing with World Talent Economic Forum and with all of our resources, talent transformation, especially as AI replace or reshape traditional roles? That is the reality. Bangladesh has to face this kind of challenge. So even the corporation has to face the challenge. So what's your thought?
Dr. Sharif, you're asking to quote some old norms here, almost a $64,000 question with this one, because CEOs need to treat reskilling as a core business system and not something that just HR does as a side project. AI is going to define changing work. And it's that genie's already out of the bag. So CEOs need to really look at reskilling and continuous learning as a core business system. They need to build a skills-based talent architecture and and this is going to be painful for many companies, they have to fund large-scale, multi-tiered learning that moves people into redesigned roles rather than just moving them out of the company, which is what we've seen most time in the past when there has been advancements like this. So the strategies need to include things like a clear future-facing workforce planning system. How do they implement AI informed and enhanced skills intelligence? In the past, a lot of learning was not hands-on. As we look at how to work collaboratively with AI and to work collaboratively with understanding that data can be wrong, but how do you work to clean it up and make sure that it's there? Because AI without good data is really putting the foundation on sinking sand. So you have to start with a skills first workforce plan and build a taxonomy of AI use cases and business priorities that drive how you reskill people. And you need to really look at ways to help employees understand that there's new roles. There's new roles in corporations for automation, new ways in corporation to augment, and new ways in corporation to be the innovators. And there's explicit reskilling pathways for these. Even the role of sales and marketing is dramatically changing because of AI. Finance dramatically changing because of AI. You know, the role of accountants is going to be tremendously changed with AR/AP very impacted by AI. So you've got to deliver and build multi-level AI learning pathways that work across all these areas, because each of them need to have a new way to be reskilled. Their work structures need to be redesigned, because often of these, what they've done for the last decade, what they learned in college, is now being outpaced with the rapid growth of AI. So the CEO needs to go back and be that visionary. They need to be that coach. They need to move from oversight to actually leading this reskilling effort, and particularly the transformation, because it's not just replacing traditional roles, and it's not just reshaping the traditional roles. It's creating many new roles and new capabilities, particularly as automation comes in, as we see that building. And even traditional roles that, for example, software development engineers, that is changing so dramatically that many college graduates with new degrees in software engineering are not getting jobs, because what they learned in college is no longer where business is headed. So CEOs have to understand that and adapt to it and be the champion and leader to do that organizational transformation that has to happen.
Thank you. Mr. Rob, my last question for you: how can CEO strengthen resilience, both personal and organizational?
Okay, well, first I'd like to address what Ali said about being data driven, because I heard it now, and I've run into this an awful lot over the years about the fact that people have an example of where data gathering is done badly, and therefore you can't trust data driven decisions, and I think that's problematic. The example was given was student testing, and I'll go back to my experience with the EEOC, the commission that came in to assure that we didn't have discrimination in the United States that failed spectacularly and pretty much destroyed my entire career path at the time. See, when I came into business initially, or at least when I went through my undergraduate work, my primary major, though I had secondaries in computer science and mathematics, was manpower management. And if you've never heard of manpower management, it's because when the EEOC came out, it pretty much took it out at the knees. And manpower management was HR as a functional entity in the company, and it was data driven. And the underlying concept was to make employees. It was really developed to obsolesce unions. If the company took extreme care of its employees, and employees were put in the proper jobs and they were given the proper tools, the belief was that there would be no motivation to create unions, and unions are a significant problem for management. And unions exist because management has a tendency to abuse employees. And so if you can get rid of the abuse, and if management employees are aligned, the theory was you wouldn't have unions. And that was kind of what got manpower management started. And it was extremely data driven. And what happened was, though, is when you assessed employees and you looked at their skill level and they looked at the capabilities, minorities did poorly. I should say not all of them. Asians tend to perform really well, but other minorities did poorly. Now, the reason they did poorly wasn't because of discrimination. The reason they did poorly is because they weren't given the same opportunities as the dominant societies were. And so they didn't have the education, they didn't have the support. They didn't have the motivation, and so the end result is they tested poorly, and so they didn't get the top paying jobs because they weren't qualified for them. But that was seen as discriminatory, and so the way to fix that was to destroy the data driven approach and then go to a different way, go to quotas, and put minorities in certain numbers so you had balance. And that did two things. One is it ensured the people that were unqualified were getting into jobs. It assured that the kinds of intergroup dynamics that you need, the cooperation that you're going to have, we're not going to materialize because people that did have the degrees and had the capability in the background, we're seeing people put in jobs, or people taking their own jobs and opportunities that weren't qualified for them. And of course, they were very resentful. And the power dynamic remained the same. Your dominant groups still were the ones in power, and all you're doing was pissing them off and making them less likely to accept women and people of color in critical roles. And so instead of moving the ball forward and reducing discrimination, here we are decades later, and discrimination is as bad as it ever was. And that wasn't because the data-driven approach didn't work. It's because they threw out the data-driven approach and decided, okay, we're just going to do this by force and make things happen. And force didn't work at all. So back to Ali's point, the issue with what she's talking about isn't the data-driven approach doesn't work. It's the data gathering approach. The data gathering methodology is flawed and broken. We are not identifying properly those folks that don't fall within buckets. The standardized testing by and of itself suggests that we're all kind of generic, that the tests applied to every person are going to provide the same result. And if we were all cookie-cutter people, if we were all machines, that would work just fine. But we're not. People are very different. They have different skills, different capabilities, and different focuses. People that do very poorly, sometimes in very structured areas, can be incredibly creative in other areas. And so the first thing a testing program should do is identify the clear proclivities of the individual child. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are they going to do well and what are they not? And then take them down a path that leverages their assets and doesn't pound them over the head for their shortcomings. It's about building the individual, not trying to turn everybody that's a round peg into a square one. It's not force fitting people into a mold. It's finding out what they are and allowing them to develop along their own interests and allowing them to be all they can be. And that's not what the education system's about. The education system, much like the HR systems that came after manpower management, is about compliance. It's about conformity. It's about getting people to fit into a mold. And so the data that they're capturing to make the decisions doesn't address or it doesn't result in the outcome. In fact, they're not capturing the very data they need to make the student successful. So the problem isn't the data-driven approach and Ali's example being bad. It's the fact that the data-driven approach is badly broken. And people aren't making decisions off the data that they should have. They're making decisions based on a framework they've created that doesn't allow for people to be different. It doesn't mold itself to the fact that we're all very different, that women have advantages over men just as men have advantages over women. I once got in an argument with a couple of women where I was saying that no, they were arguing that women could do everything a man could do and men could do. We were all basically the same, and I said, no, that's not true. It's we each group has some fundamentally differences in strengths and weaknesses. I honestly believe women make better CEOs than men do, or would if they were allowed to be what they could be. Because one of the advantages that women have is an ability to look at a large number of things at once and be able to determine an outcome. Men tend to be far more focused and are much more likely to have tunnel vision. And from my perspective, I think that the breadth that women naturally have would make them far better CEOs. And I think Lisa Su over at AMD is fortunately demonstrating that, because I've had very few good examples of this going back. But the reason for that is women are forced into the same round hole that men are developed in. And so a typical woman CEO is doing her damnedest to perform like a man does. And that's not using her strengths. And so that goes back to this underlying idea that people are different. And if the system doesn't take into account that difference, if it doesn't capture their uniqueness, then it can't optimize them. Using David Smith's example of digital twins, we probably should be thinking about how do we develop a digital twin of every child we're trying to educate. And then we could take that digital twin through an entire educational process in minutes and see what the best outcome is going to be. The best outcome for them. What's going to make them the most complete person? What's going to help them be not the most necessarily most content. You don't necessarily want employees that are content, because you want them to strive. You want them to move forward. That was one of the big problems with communism, this idea that people were going to work for the greater good. It really didn't work out that way. We're not motivated that way. We want to advance. We want the rewards. We will work and strive to a particular goal that's maybe just a little bit out of our reach. So you don't want them content. But on the other hand, you don't want them to feel beaten down, like they don't have a choice, like they're stuck in a job that is a dead end. That's all really bad for productivity and moving a company forward. So you want them to be the best they can be. You want them to strive forward. To do that, importantly, you've got to know who they are, and you've got to be able to trial out how it's going to work. You might make a mistake. You might not have the right data. You've got to discover that before you create a child that is mismatched for the career and position that they're in. And that really requires a huge focus on data and a huge focus on understanding the child's strengths, their weaknesses, their proclivities, what makes them unique. And that's where I think education really leaves us down. Now, I've actually forgotten entirely the question we wanted me to ask, but I've already taken up to answer, but I've already taken way the heck too much time. But the end I want to leave you with is data-driven isn't bad. Bad data is bad. And what Ali's looking at is a system that's capturing bad data and making decisions off that bad data. And the end result is much like my example with the EEOC, has been bad. I will say this: a bad data system is not better than no data system. I would rather have no data than have bad data, because with bad data, I think I'm founded. I'm secure in my position, which has no foundation at all, and I'm going to do a lot of really bad stuff. I have no data, then I know I have no data. I'm going to be much more agile. I'm going to realize that I'm on thin ice, and I'm going to act accordingly. Using that John Akers example at IBM, that's exactly where he was. He thought he had good data. He thought he was making strong decisions. His entire foundation was crap. And the end result is he lost his job, and he almost took what had been the strongest technology company in the world out of business. And it wasn't his fault, but the end result is he got all the blame. And and IBM is a data-driven company. You can't argue they're not. But they got into a position of bad data-driven, and as I said, bad data is data, and it's not data-driven is bad. It's that bad data-driven is bad.
Thank you. Thank you for this excellent session. Thank you, Kobir Bhai, for joining today's sessions. And you are also part of our team as a mentor, as a colleagues. And Jiri and Ali Rice and Rob Enderle and David Smith and all of the famous people also join in our team. Today, we are just sharing that for the CEO development program with all of the excellent people from around the world. They will join as a trainer for these programs. And Mr. Kobir, you will be part of this ecosystem, and you also train our global peoples through this ecosystem. So hopefully it will be amazing journey for all of us, and we can create a better ecosystem with all of your expertise, your innovations. A World Talent Economy Forum believe in excellence. We always focus on the excellent group of peoples, quality innovations, high quality technologies and research, and we publish research paper, publishing books, and definitely corporate is the one of the place where they can like introduce our innovations to the global community. So, Mr. Kobir, you are very important for our ecosystem. And thank you, Madam Ali Rice, Mr. Rob Enderley, David Smith, and Giri for your continuous support. I request all of our audience share our content as much as possible with the government agency, corporation, and academia. Thank you. Bye bye and take care.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.